Exactly. The Arbinger has a Bradsman ability. I love everything about it. We had some tournaments this weekend, guys. I want to start with the important thing. Did everything go without a hitch in the East, in the Great East?
So my RTT went off absolutely fantastically. We had a 20-person RTT, was really fun. DOG member actually won it, Matt O'Hara. It was absolutely just a fun, fantastic time. Everybody really enjoyed it. We did GW layout 3-2-1. So we did in first round 3, then 2, then 1. And I used the missions that work with those, including one of the most hated missions ever. But if you use the GW3 table, it works really well with that one. And everyone seemed to have a really good time. So it was fantastic.
Nice. I put some Uthway on the table this weekend.
Nice.
I was excited. And the funny thing is, when I decided I was going to do that, I basically put up Battlescribe and I put in Eldrad, and I'm like, I'm playing Eldrad. And then I went, I should probably put some more models in here besides Eldrad. But he's definitely going in there. This is happening. And then I got, then Corey Gulcher in chat tried to kill me. So I didn't make day 2.
I mean, cat allergies are a real thing. So I now know how to take you down, and it's going to be fantastic.
Well, that and I decided to sit up for a while after taking way too much allergy medicine, and apparently my heart decided it was going to not settle down and was like, "You're going to have to go take care of that." And I was like, "Oh, snarf." So, Alex shows up. So Alex goes, I don't think I have a YouTube account, because I go, hey man, I'm really tired. I was a little beat up yesterday. I was in the hospital, and I need some love, and I need some, chat mojo to keep me excited and going. And he's like, I think I might be the only adult that doesn't have a YouTube account. And I'm like, well, go make one.
I had a fun weekend. Got to watch my buddy Brad dodge me like he normally does. But,
he sent me to the hospital. I was so hard dodging Tom that I just went to the hospital.
You can't convince me that Brad's like, oh man, me and Tom's gonna play tomorrow. Broke into some random person's house and just started rubbing their cats all over his face. That's exactly what happened.
Exactly, Wow. This is the second event Brad has dodged me by pretending to die.
So, right. He dodged an entire event of mine by pretending to die. So
actually, the funny thing is I went early, and I called over John DeFrank. Thank you. Actually, a lot of people messaged me and asked how I was and everything. I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. But I was coming literally from the hospital in my sweats, and I was like, I'm just going to go straight to the tournament. And I go, I'll make game 5, and I'll just hang out, just screw around. And I got DeFrank on the phone, and he's like, "Oh, do you want to play round 5? If you show up, you can play." And I'm like, "Well, when's round 5 start?" And he goes, "Snigs, when's round 5 start? Right now." And I'm like, "I will not make right now." So, pocket cat, exactly.
So tell me all about Glass City, because I didn't get to attend. I'm sure a lot of people didn't get to attend, and would love to hear about it.
Well, first off, we got to tell everyone that some guy sandbagged, found a way to win, even though we thought we were all betting against him. But Ogden managed to pull it out.
I heard that guy's a real asshole.
So congratulations, Tom. He won Glass City. The event went off really, really well.
Brad, I got to give the thing that Brad gave me and put it on real quick. There we go. Brad gave this to me, guys. This is my prize.
So one of the big things I really liked, I don't know if we talked about it, Jason Smigowski run the Glass City GT, who's run all the Glass City GTs. Also, we have a video coming out on a recap of the tournament. Thanks, John. He did all the video where he's editing it together and put it together, us randomly talking about all the things that are good about the tournament, like sitting around eating too much, drinking too much, and then occasionally playing games at 40K. But he had a piece of terrain that was the dead set. It was player place terrain, but there was one piece, I think it was 13 by 8 or 13 by 9. And it was a rectangle in the middle, just like this. And it's basically a glass house. You can see in and out of it if you try to take the objective. And I loved it. It took away so much of the angst of who gets that first drop, and they're going to slam either a tiny piece of terrain, a forest, a crate, or whatever to open the entire thing up, or they're going to put the biggest piece down and make it so that they can stage in the middle and take the middle objective from you. So you couldn't take the middle objective, but you still had a blocking piece. It worked out super well. Playing on it, I really enjoyed it.
I think it helps the player place. I really do. I think Jason had a good thing today. Like, I like what he did. But unfortunately for me, halfway through the tournament, the same thing still happened that makes me not really like player place terrain. So I'm playing against Monic, and my and Monic's games are usually pretty close. He's a great player from the Midwest. Probably one of the top players in DOG, but unfortunately, he just doesn't play player placed. So our game was over in one round because he didn't know how to place them to prevent like really good angles. So I don't know, because of stuff like that, I feel like there's already a pretty big gap between the more seasoned players who play a lot compared to the casual tournament players. Bring in a whole nother element that creates a wider gap. It's just not fair, in my opinion.
I tend to agree on that because it's one more thing out there that you have to be good at and practice. And maybe you don't play on that. Maybe you play a lot of GW. Maybe you play a lot of WTC. Maybe you play UKTC. So it's a big deal. And it was, like I was saying, the Monic versus Tau matchup was Turnins versus Tau, which I think really becomes if one person doesn't put out good terrain, it's just over. So,
like, we talked about it afterwards. He's like, what could I have done differently? And I was like, well, we cleared the board, right? Our game was over in 35, 45 minutes because I was able just to, I set my terrain. You know what I do, right? Or I just called you up. I'm sorry about Brad. You know what? Because I'm a little triangle up where I can easily get out, shoot, show him back behind and can't be seen. But he didn't. So, like, set my terrain up and I would just moved over, got all the shots I wanted, moved back in. So anyways, like I said, we cleared the table, and I just showed him how he could put his terrain and how he would prevent all my shots. Like, wow, game would have been completely different. I was like 100% would have been different. And that game right there just puts me in like a sour note. Like, I don't mean to parade on like, rain on the parade of like player place, but it's a whole nother skill level. And if your meta doesn't do it a lot, you have a severe disadvantage against somebody that could be equally as good as you. Like, or if they're better, it's just over.
You want to hear about the Brad messing something up story and paying the piper? So I'm playing Dylan, and he goes first, zooms up. He's playing, it's Eldar on Eldar, but he's playing Ynnari. He's got the Incarn, and he zooms up a couple bike squads, basically so he could pop the Incarn at the end, pull him in. And I'm like, I'm going to shoot this bike squad. I think I still have enough guns, and then I've got a assault with the Shining Spears if I don't do enough, and I'll put him down. So instead what happens is he Jedi Knights all my shots, and then the Shining Spears go in, do one wound. I'm sitting on 3 6s, which are auto saves for Eldar with Fate dice. And as he's rolling his attacks, as he says it, I go, oh no, the card ignores invulns. So he drops a people's elbow on the Shining Spears, walks over, makes a decent charge, and I'm basically having Eldrad and all of my warlocks having a little group meeting, a community hall meeting, and the Incarn showed up. He was uninvited, thank you very much, and he did not treat any of those guys right. He was not pleasant. We had to call the police. He put all of the Eldar in the hospital. So on my chap of 2, I had a Farseer left. So I told him, I go, I'm going to need a second to get my mojo back together and start playing like a real person as opposed to the person that just let you soccer toss 4 of my units.
Did you win that game?
I did. After that, I played very well. I just decided to overestimate how easily I could kill the Incarn. the Incard was not having any of that shit. He was like, nah, ain't going out like that. And basically hockey fought all of my casters and just beat them up. And I went, well, shit. I guess got to do some more stuff now. Exactly why it's got it. Terrain is a crutch. Get good, Tom.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, though, I mean, I like what Snigs did. I think the way he put that train in the middle helped out, like what could have been even abused even more. But as for the rest of GT, I thought it was fantastic. I think it was one of the better ones he's ran in a while. Everyone had a great time. They actually cut ticket sales early, and it was a good thing they did because they didn't use the back room this year, and it would have been super overcrowded. So I was appreciative of that. But it was a fun event, a lot of great vibes, no issues that I've seen at least.
What do you guys think about? We were talking about terrain. We talked about, the difference he did with player placed in the Glass City. And Brian, you've run every kind of terrain under the sun, as far as static terrain, GW terrain, player placed terrain, and stuff like that. As a TO, what do you prefer? I mean, obviously anything where you can do the least amount, but like, what do you prefer as a player and as a TO? Apparently Brian died. Maybe?
He's talking, but he's not, no sound. There we go. Sorry about that.
I was just about to say, as he comes back and goes, and that's all I have to say about the war in Vietnam.
So, as a TO, I have found that from a player standpoint, from players giving me feedback, they like the GW terrain as long as you use the setups that go with the missions that they're designed to work with. So if you use one with one, setup one that goes with the missions that setup one works with, 2 and 3. That third GW terrain set, which I know hasn't gotten used a lot yet out in the world, is really, really strong. It actually made what's the terrible mission that everybody hates? I'm drawing a blank on the name right now.
It's 11. It's Recover the Relics, because they play it on the day 1 terrain. They play it on set 1, but it's a hammer and anvil mission.
No, it's not that one.
Abandoned Sanctuaries? Yeah, the one with 3 across the middle where they're all in the open.
Yeah, for that one works really well with the setup 3. It worked really nice. So it was seeing, and look, I spent a little bit of time, putting the tables down, putting objectives down, and playing with everything to find out which ones that I felt worked well. And after doing that a couple times now and using it a few times, it seems to work really well. I'm not saying it's perfect, because there are some drawbacks that close combat armies are a little bit more favored in certain missions, shooting are a little more favored in certain missions, but it seems to get a nice standardized, everybody likes it thing. I personally, as a player, like varied tables. I like where skill set comes into where a Du Bois style event where almost every table is different in some form or aspect. You have to adjust your play style to that terrain. I like that as a player. I know a lot of other players do, but there's a ton that don't as well. So it's a catch-22 on that one.
England ran a tournament where, I can't remember where, but they didn't run it on the standard UKTC. They literally had like a row of UKTC, a row of GW, and a row of like WTC-esque, one of the tables that was slightly heavier. And you could play on any of those, and you keep changing. So I kind of like the idea of that, so that you have a set rows, but you can play different each time. So you're not always playing in the exact same thing.
Yeah. It's tough because is one of the things that I've said, and I will continue to say, it is really tough as a TO to, and I know Tom can attest to this as well. It's tough to keep up edition to edition updating tables. I have been affiliated and helping with Du Bois since we actually figured this out the other day, since 2011. And Du Bois has existed for like probably 5 years, 6 years prior to that. I've updated terrain every year, added stuff, taken stuff away. And events that don't go for making profit, in which I don't fault any events that go for making profit, all the power to those events. I understand it. It's a business model when you're running a business. Most of the stuff I do, actually 95% of what I do, is we go to break even and hopefully add a table the next year. A lot of the expenses for the terrain come out of the TO's pockets or the store that's running them's pocket or someone's pocket. And it's tough to continually update tables, but it's needed in a lot of cases. Sometimes you find tables that, like, Brad, I know you'll remember a lot of our tables for Du Bois. We had some really thematic tables with like a train on it and some forests and a bunch of different things, and it was really thematic and it was great. In 5th through 7th edition, in 8th edition, that table got to be a little rough to play on. And then 9th rolled around and that table became, you can't use it anymore. It just doesn't have enough stuff. It doesn't have enough obscuring. So that table got retired for a little while until we can add more to it and find stuff that works with the theme that we have on that table to make it a table that works. And it's an expense, and TOs counteract that all the time.
The thing is that it's really hard with that, because it's difficult to make a table that looks beautiful and is also playable. There's tons of tables that look great and are unplayable, and there's tons of tables that are just the basic L here, this is it, and you're like, I can play on this table, but it doesn't give you that whole feel of playing, the narrative feel of playing it.
I mean, it's a real struggle to replace tables. I mean, this year, as we were ramping up talks for MCM, I think it's going to cost us $10,000 just to slightly update some of our tables. I mean, we sold some of our old ones. Like, we didn't even want to try to fix them. So I think Pete just sold them. But I think it was like $10,000 this year we put into terrain.
Yep.
And that was only expanding like 20 tables maybe.
Yep.
So...
And the tables that we bought with the Salt City GT was 40 tables of exactly all the same terrain, made by the guys who make that WTC terrain. So it's got that sturdy, pre-printed plastic foam. I don't know exactly what it's called that it's made out of. It's durable. It's nice. It looks good, but it's 40 exactly the same tables. And that was $5,000. And that was them giving me one hell of a deal on it, because they gave me like 50 euros off every table. So I was really appreciative of them to do that. I mean, they cut me a huge deal. I'm so thankful to them for doing that.
That's not really feasible for us, because we try to pride ourselves on having not too many of the same tables. So that's why if you look at a lot of our tables, like, we have lots of different runs. I think we have like 20 different variants at MCM right now. But I mean, I thought about maybe getting like 10 tables of those. They look kind of cool, but I just haven't decided yet.
Yeah. Hey, if you need to borrow them, I can always bring 10 tables out with me.
Oh, yeah.
I want to go into this real quick on the thing, because Anna and Brent both made good points, because he goes, Brent likes to play on something different every single time. Anna goes, I'm the opposite. He goes, I like symmetry so that no one lost because of the table they ended up on. And I put in chat, I understand both ways, but like, it makes it very difficult to make everybody happy with that. And obviously you can't make everybody happy all the time, but you can try to get what the majority of people want. But is it more of a, do we start talking about certain events being more competitive than others? Or is there something that we make a differentiation in certain tournaments?
There's
with games.
Go ahead, Brad.
Go ahead.
No, you go, bud. I got you.
So with GW announcing their tournament circuit, we may end up getting standardized GW style tables. They might ask that if you're going to do a qualifier. I have no knowledge on this. Let me be very, very specific about this. I know nothing about it. You never know. They might say, hey, can you have X number of tables be, GW layout? We don't know. They might say, hey, you're just a qualifier, do what you want. But I think if all of their circuit events that they do are GW style, that might become a standard for the next season. I don't know the answer to that question.
I'll give you that. It's just tough.
My opinion on it is both of those have issues. Like if you run like all they're all symmetry equally, and people know the event more, or know the organizer more, or they're just familiar with the event, they will build armies that will perform better on that set
Agreed.
of terrain rather than an all comers list.
Mhm.
And when you have them all radically different, you might get some tables. For example, like one thing we talked about Snigs, about Glass City. Now, fantastic event. A vast majority of tables were pretty fair and very fun to play on. But that my last round, you seen that, Brad. I played against Brandon Volley, another one of our DOG guys, very good with Tau. Was playing against Tau and Tau, and the table's train was super light. I'm like, whoever got the first shots on each other was going to cripple each other. So that's that's an issue when we have radically different tables. We try to do in between that at the official DOG events. So all our tables are designed with the same dimensions, but the actual pieces themselves are different. So the footprint, since we run like a hybrid GW style, is the same. But if you've seen some of our U shapes are full U's like GW. Some of them might just be like the long walls are halves. It's all slightly different, all relatively similar at the same time. But it's just hard. Like I watched a lot of events where me and you talked before. Me and you were going to an event before, Brad, and it was like 2 years ago, and we were practicing for it, and we're literally customizing our list to be for that event specific because we knew what the train was going to be like.
100%. You change exactly. I'm going to change my army completely depending on what the terrain at the event's going to be.
Well, for those who have been to like Adepticon, it was. Look, I worked at that last year. I enjoy the event, but their terrain for this edition is not 100% of all their tables are not up to snuff. And a couple people were like, "Well, if I get this table and against this matchup, I'm screwed." And I don't ever want anyone to have that at any event that I'm officially running where I'm in charge of it, because that's not great as a TO, because you don't want people to walk away feeling bad. And that's a tough line to toe when you're talking about 200 tables, 300 tables of terrain. You start looking at like LVO, 500 tables of terrain. It's a lot of undertaking.
There's a thing as well, like we ACO 2 years ago, and we're talking about at this point in time, and this is gonna make Brad's head blow up here, but Brad was probably the highest performing player in 40K at the time. Like he was winning a lot of events with that Dark Eldar army. I mean, not many people could keep up with what he was doing with Drakari, right? And I was still coming back relatively to the hobby. Brad knew me, but not a lot of people knew at the time. And I'll admit this. It's rare I admit this, but Brad was a much better player than me at the time. And he had a great army. At the time. Brad, there's like a 5-minute video of Brad walking home my pocket at Glass City this weekend, but besides that, moving on. No, like, me and Brad's walking around trying ACO, we drove there together, and Brad's like, "Yo, man, I'm gonna be honest with you. If we get this pyramid table, we get your Dark Angels, I'm just gonna shake your hand and quit. Like, you're gonna owe me a lot of drinks because we're gonna go to the bar."
Oh, there was no place to hide.
Yeah, exactly.
It was legitimately nowhere I could put any models on the board.
And that was before Frontline had player place terrain.
Yes.
And those tables were their older LVO tables that were from,
those are forever
2020. And then we were playing them, in the first big post-COVID event. And look, I've ran a lot of events, and I was walking around with Reese and Kicker, and I sometimes have a habit of when I'm talking to event organizers and I'm helping them out, I don't bite my tongue, and I didn't bite my tongue. And I'm like, well, some of these tables are complete garbage. I hope we don't have to use these ones that have this giant open factory on it. And that's where, and I still blame myself for this. And I blame myself. Other people will say, no, it's not your fault because you didn't make the final decision. But like, I went, man, it'd be like better if you let the players put the train down themselves. At least then they'd have control over it and they couldn't bitch so much. I'm not saying that's where player play string came from 100%, but I think that was the start of the conversation.
Yeah, I remember that year they pulled all top 16 of us to the side, and Brad was he's a couple wine chalices in at this point. And I'll never
What?
forget. I'm hanging out with him, and we're sitting there, and Reese is talking to us, and he's like, "So, before we start your guys' games today, it was like right in the morning of that last day. Like, what do you guys think of the training and the event stuff?" And Brad's like, "Sucks
No, that
so
is
bad."
not what I said. I said, if you're playing here, we can play. I go, but there was multiple rows where it was just ridiculous. It was the I played two different games where if I hadn't gone first, I just die because there was zero places to hide. There was so we had some of those old terrain tables, and that was a really big thing on that. And you don't want to have people having a shit experience where you think that their player skill can't help them. If Brian, you and I line up against each other, and whoever goes first, it completely wins the game because neither player has a place to hide. Well, that's not a game. That's just we're throwing dice around, just hoping for the best at that point in time. You don't feel that your skill makes any difference, and that's not what you want.
I went to an event recently where TJ Lanigan and I were playing against each other, and we went up to the table and we went, well, we can talk about this after who wins the die roll to go first. Because it was, I don't want to say it was completely Planet Bowling Ball, but it was really Planet Bowling Ball. He goes first, I get shot off the board. I go first, he loses all his screening units, and I was playing Tyranids, and it becomes really tough for him. And he won the roll to go first. We rolled some of the important die rolls out and went, yep, this is what's going to end up happening. And we went through the game, and we played without doing every die roll. We went to, this is important, this is what's going to happen here. Yep, that squad of screens going to die, da-da-da-da-da. We just walked through. But then it was like, all right, I got 2 units of 9 Tyranid warriors are going to shoot at your Terminators, and if I can get 3 of them away, and then in the assault phase, I can probably take them out. I took none away because we die rolled it out. And it's just, it was rough because the table wasn't designed for the current edition.